Alright guys, as you can hear, our Chevy Caprice project car has a pretty healthy heartbeat. The following video will show how we got it to this point using Melling performance parts. Go ahead and watch the video and see how we got to this point. As you can see, we've got the engine and transmission, actually the whole powertrain out of the car. Just getting ready to start tearing the engine down now. Got all of our parts laid out. This is everything from Melling that we're going to use, all of our valve train components, our oil pump, timing set, cam and springs. Over here we've got our Circle D torque converter we're going to use, all of our GM parts as far as gaskets and transpan and the velo and block off plate, some Velcro head bolts. Over here we've got our Cooks 1 7/8 long tube headers, one of their Green Cats exhaust systems, along with the axle back setup from Cooks. From Improved Racing, we've got a VCM Performance cold air intake, and that's pretty much going to round out the parts we're going to change on this thing. Interestingly enough, we found a bad cam lobe. This engine only got about 40,000 miles on it. As you can see, that cam lobe starting to come apart. Interestingly enough, the lifters just got very slight markings on the rollers, so it lead me to believe it's a cam material issue on this one. For the reassembly procedure of this, we're going to start by assembling this back to a short block. Once we get it back to a short block, we'll go to work on the cylinder heads. So let's start by getting our cam lubed up and put in. So what we've got is one of our new Melling Performance camshafts and our Mel Lube cam lube. Make sure you coat the bearing journals and the lobes liberally with this. Using our camshaft install tool with the 3-bolt cam adapter installed. You probably noticed when I was disassembling the engine, I had just the handle, which is the single bolt version. So one tool gets you both cams. We'll put a link to the cam part number as well as the tool part number. Once we get our cam lubed up, we want to slide our camshaft in, very carefully making sure we don't hit any of the cam bearings with the cam lobes. If we nick one of those bearings, even a small nick in a cam bearing will really affect your oil pressure. Now we can remove our install tool. Next thing we're going to do is put our cam thrust plate in. Now on an LS engine, a cam thrust plate replacement is crucial. It's got a one-time use seal that seals both those oil galleys up. So anytime that thrust plate comes off, it must be replaced. Our thrust plate includes new bolts that have got thread locker on them, so it's kind of an added benefit to buying the Melling thrust plate. Once we get these down, say finger tight, we'll go back and torque them to 18 foot-pounds. Now that our camshaft's installed, we can go ahead and put our Melling Performance timing set on. This particular set does have a multi-keyway crank sprocket. We're going to go ahead and set it straight up. You never want to use a hammer or a hammer and punch to install your crank sprocket. You don't want to beat on that crank and slam it back and forth against the bearings. I like to use this is a balancer installer for an LS, and then just a piece of pipe that basically fits really well. We'll use this to draw it down, that way we don't damage, you know, bearings or the sprocket or anything else. Okay, with that done, we can take a look at installing our cam sprocket along with our timing chain. Our crankshaft moved on us, so we're going to have to go ahead and spin that back around to top dead center. Okay, with our crank back at top dead center, we can go ahead and I like to put the cam sprocket on and go ahead and rotate our cam around until our timing mark's straight down. Then we're not trying to fight with it quite so bad with the chain on it. Okay, looks like we've got our timing marks lined up. This is a Melling lock plate kit for your cam sprocket bolts. So we get this down, we'll bend the tabs over to lock the bolts, so keep them from backing out. Once again, on these bolts, we're going to go down to 18 foot-pounds. Now we can install our Melling timing chain dampener. This engine was originally equipped with a tensioner. I personally like using a dampener anytime I can instead of a tensioner, just less moving parts. And we'll go ahead and go 18 foot-pounds on these as well. Okay, so we're going to tighten our three cam sprocket bolts to 26 foot-pounds. Okay, guys, next step we're going to put lifters in. I like coating the lifter roller and body with a little bit of Mel lube. Just kind of prevent a dry start as much as we can. Another thing you need to do anytime you're putting lifters in an LS engine, these plastic guide plates, it's imperative that you replace those. If not, you can end up with a lifter spinning and the guide plate sideways on the cam, and then you've got cam failure. One thing I'd like to mention on these lifters too, as far as the oil holes concerned, sometimes the guys in the tech department get a lot of calls on the oil holes in the side of the lifters. Orientation really makes absolutely no difference. That whole oil galley down through there is flooded, and you're feeding the lifter around this band through the oil galley. So where that's oriented makes absolutely no difference, whether it's front or back or up or down, depending on the style of the lifter. Once we get those set in, we want to put in the little bolts with the shoulders on them that hold the lifter guides in place. Once those are installed, we want to torque them to 106 inch-pounds. Okay, guys. So since we're doing away with the active fuel management on this, we've got to install our non-active fuel management cover in place of our V-loam that we took off. So we'll go ahead and set this on. This has got O-rings to block off the oil ports to the V-loam. So these bolts get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. I like to just run through everything twice when I'm torquing it, just to make sure that nothing, for lack of better words, settles in. Okay, so next we're going to take our Melling 10355 oil pump and install it. I went ahead and pulled the orange spring out, put the factory pressure yellow spring in it. The RPM range, we're gonna turn this engine. We don't need the high pressure, so I went ahead and installed the standard pressure spring, and we'll be fine with that. Installing these pumps, a really good idea to pour some oil in it and just spin the rotor set by hand to make sure everything internal is lubed. And the centering procedure I like to use, we take the mount bolts down finger tight. Basically just touch them up against the body of the pump. Okay, so once we've got our pump lubed up, our mount bolts installed finger tight, we put our crank bolt back in. I'm just going to rotate the engine 360 degrees. This will essentially center the pump. Once we've done that, we want to torque our pump mount bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Okay, now that we've done that, we can go ahead and spin this engine over on the stand. Now, looking at the design of our pickup tube and our instruction sheet that came with our pump, shows that we need to use the green O-ring. I just like to take a little clean engine oil and lubricate the O-ring to help it go in the slide into the pump a little easier. From there, we'll install our pickup tube to pump mount bolts. I'm also going to install this M29500 bracket. That way we've got support on both sides of that tube mounted to the pump. Just a little added assurance. We're going to torque these to 106 inch-pounds. Then we're going to go back and we're going to hit our two bolts that attach the pickup tube to the main cap studs. We're going to torque those to 18 inch-pounds. Okay. So other than the oil pan, that finishes up our short block reassembly. Stay tuned. We'll be doing the cylinder heads next, and we'll carry on from there. Okay, everybody. So the plan of these cylinder heads is we're going to pop the springs off from them, take the valves out. We've got a new set of Melling performance springs we're going to put in these heads, new retainers, new keepers, new valves as well. The valves, I took our valves down to Hess Performance Machine down in Jonesville and had him put a back cut on them for us so we could get a little better flow. So yeah, let's pop these springs out real quick and You can take a look at the guides and the seals when we get in there, and if we need to do anything with those, we'll go ahead and take care of that while we're in here as well. Okay guys, there's our head tore down. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the guides now and do a few other things, get them cleaned up, and we'll be back to reassemble. Alright everybody, so we got our head apart, got everything fairly cleaned up. As you can see, I had a back cut put on these valves, just try to get a little more flow out of the intake and exhaust. We've lapped them in. Go ahead and put our springs and retainers and keepers on now. All Melling parts. Yeah. Let's just lube the stems up with a little engine oil to fully to dry start on the valves. Helps with the seal too as well. If you got questions about the valve lapping procedure, we've got instructions on how to do that on our website, a video on our YouTube page, or you can link to it through melling.com. We've also got one on checking valve spring installed height, which I've already done on this head, and installing valve springs, which we'll be doing right now. Okay everybody, as you can see, we got our new springs put in, retainers, keepers, and valves. So we're getting to the point where we can start putting the top end of this thing back together. Okay everybody, we got our heads cleaned up, we've got our block cleaned up, we've got new gaskets installed. It's time to start putting together the top end. One thing I want to mention is you should always blow these head bolt holes in the block out. If you have fluid in those, I've seen guys crack cylinder heads tightening bolts into head bolt holes that are full of coolant. I already did that before I was recording. Our heads are on, our bolts are installed. What we're going to do now is torque the heads down. It's a 3-pass torque. We start with 22 foot-pounds, then we go to 90 degrees, and then 70 degrees we finish with. And we're going to do these in sequence. Alright, first pass to 90. Then we'll go back and hit them all at 70. Okay, there's all the big bolts and the small ones back here. We start in the center and work our way out at 22. Spin around and repeat the same process on the other side. Okay, everybody, to the point now where we're going to start putting push rods and rocker arms on. Going to the Melling, just stock replacement push rods. Putting our Melling stock replacement rocker arms as well. One thing you might notice about our stock replacement rocker arms is there's not a trunnion kit needed for these. They've already got full rotation trunnions in them. Kind of a nice added feature there. I do push rods. I like to put a little Mel lube on the ends, kind of eliminate the dry start. Also put a little bit on the tips of the valves before we put the rocker arms on, just to give those a little lubrication as well. Now I'm going to use the cordless impact just as a nut runner on these. And we'll go back and torque them all to 22 foot-pounds. Alright everybody, that pretty much does it for our long block assembly. Obviously got to get the valve covers, the oil pan, and the timing cover back on. I'll do that and the water pump as well, and we'll get her put back on the cradle. And once we get to that point, we'll get back to video. Okay everybody, as you can see, we've got our powertrain set back on the engine cradle. Got our Cook's long tubes installed.
You didn't even need to tune it, fired right up, huh?
Yeah. It's going to need a tune to make everything work like it should, but yeah.
So we're looking at 327 at the
There it
wheels.
is. Yeah, 300 and 327.
We participate in numerous events throughout the year with a Melling Performance Cruiser. Follow us on social media to find out where we'll be next.
Please pursue vehicle